Over the last few years, I've been speculating on how AI could transform gaming, both when it comes to assets generation, like graphics and sound, but also with more immersive experiences, particularly with NPC interactions. Well, it looks like an intrepid modder has managed to create a prototype of what AI and NPCs in future games could behave like, putting together ChatGPT, speech recognition and text-to-speech. Modder art from the machine has made Skyrim NPCs not only have varied conversations with the player that were not in the original game, but conversations that show awareness of who they are in the game, what is happening around them, and that actually makes sense within the context of their existence, so to speak. This is absolutely fascinating and gives us a glimpse of how disruptive AI will really be for the gaming industry in the coming years. A true revolution is about to unfold. Today's video is sponsored by Urcdkeys.com. If you buy a retail Windows 10 key, you could spend $100 or more. But if you buy an OEM key from Urcdkeys.com, a Windows 10 Pro key will cost you only $15 when you use the coupon code C25. The keys work globally, and you can even get a free upgrade from Microsoft to Windows 11 if you wish. After you've made your purchase, you will find your key in your purchased orders in the Urcdkeys website. Click on Get Keys and copy the key. Then in Windows, click on Start and type Activate, and then on Activation Settings. Then click Change Product Key, pasting the key you just purchased, and click Next. That's it. Your copy of Windows is now activated. If you want Office 2021 Professional, you can use the same C25 discount code and get it for just $60. Urcdkeys is also having a spring sale with some cool, affordable mechanical keyboards, gaming mice, and even chairs. A big thanks to Urcdkeys.com for sponsoring today's video. Check the links in the video description to get your cheap OEM Windows keys today. The first thing to note here is that this is clearly a prototype. The interactions are still a bit rough around the edges, and some of the voicing is clunky and a bit soulless. But if you can see past the expected lack of polish coming from a single modder, there's no denying that there's huge potential here if a large team of developers and writers had the time to constrain the AI and polish the production elements. So bear with the lack of polish is what I'm getting at. So let me show you an example of a conversation that is not in the game, and we'll carry on from there. In this scene, Ulfberth Warbear, who is an NPC in Whiterun, is a merchant and sells weapons forged by his wife, has a conversation with the player. In this interaction in Skyrim VR, the Dragonborn picks up an iron sword off the ground and asks Ulfberth what he thinks of it. Here's his response.
What do you think of this?
Let me think. Let me take a closer look at that sword. It seems to be a well-crafted iron sword with a soul gem embedded in the hilt. The enchantment on it allows the wielder to capture the souls of their enemies.
So firstly, Ulfberth is aware of what item the player just picked up, and secondly, after some processing, he is also able to describe that very weapon in his own character voice, with the sort of detail that a weapons merchant would provide. Earlier in the conversation, he was also aware of what time of day it was and when his shop would close when asked. Later, when Ulfberth is in the Bannerlord Mare, so that's the inn in Whiterun, he is aware that he is taking a break from working in the shop and responds as such.
I was just taking a break from the shop and decided to come here to relax for a bit. The Bannerlord Mare is always a great place to unwind after a long day.
So how does this work? In the current form, basically the player casts a spell to begin a conversation. Then the player actually speaks to the NPC with his voice. Yes, the speech recognition AI turns that into text, and that text is used as a prompt for ChatGPT's API. Then, using some clever Python scripting, ChatGPT is then aware of everything that has happened since the player cast that spell, like what objects the player picked up, or if he skinned an animal, or if he looted a chest, etc. And the prompt text is met with a reply from the NPC that actually makes sense within the game's reality, with awareness of all those events, and making sure the reply is lore-friendly and coherent with the NPC's history. And the NPC's response, based on what ChatGPT produces, is done with text-to-speech synthesis, hence the somewhat robotic voices. The voices are, however, based on the original NPC voices. When it all comes together, it really is incredible stuff. Let's look at a more complex example. Here is Ulfberth's wife, who forges the weapons they sell at their store. In the original dialogues, you are restricted to asking the NPCs things about their business, related quests, and maybe some world-relevant events like the Civil War going on in Skyrim. But what would a blacksmith woman in Skyrim have to say if you asked her about the meaning of life?
Some might argue that we are products of genetics, environment, and conditioning, and that our lives and choices are predetermined to a certain extent. Others might argue that we have a degree of free will and the power to shape our own destinies. Ultimately, though, such philosophical inquiries do not have a concrete answer and are better left to those who have the time and energy to ponder them. As for me, I'll stick to what I know best, forging weapons and armor.
So it's a bit jarring that Adrienne here, a simple blacksmith, seems to be a fan of Viktor Frankl. But not only did the NPC reply in something resembling her original voice in the game, she gave an answer that is fairly consistent with her character. While there was that initial philosophical discourse based on what she could have heard others say, as she puts it, she ends the conversation by stating that she'll stick to what she knows best, forging weapons and armor. While not perfect by any means, this adds a layer of complexity to the NPC that is believable enough to make the interaction a lot richer. Remember, this is being done by a single modder. Imagine what a studio with a lot more resources could do. Imagine how immersive the interactions with NPCs will be if these sorts of systems are added to future RPGs. Bethesda should really hire this guy to work on the next Elder Scrolls. If you've played the game, you might remember Danica Purespring, the priestess of Kinnereth that heals those in need in the Whiterun Temple. Have you ever wondered if her faith in Kinnereth ever falters? Actually, in the game, if you steal something from the temple, she will send some hired thugs after you. Not a very holy thing to do. Wouldn't her beliefs prevent her from doing something like that? Let's ask her about these things.
Life is full of obstacles and setbacks, and there are moments when it can be difficult to stay true to our convictions. We are all human, and we are bound to make mistakes and have moments of weakness. As a priestess of Kinneret, I believe that the goddess is always with me, guiding me on my path and giving me the strength and wisdom I need to stay true to my deepest values.
Again, what ChatGPT came up with makes sense for this character. It's not only consistent with her role in this world, but it's close to what an actual person with her profession and beliefs would reasonably feel and say. Now, one of the things that takes the immersion away, or at least it did for me in the many playthroughs of Skyrim and the previous Elder Scrolls games, was how after I've captured a dragon in Whiterun, became the Archmage in the Mage's College, defeated the Ebony Warrior, ended the Civil War, and bloody saved the world, the average NPC still has no idea who I am, and with every interaction it's like he's never seen or heard of me before. Well, this work in progress mod actually saves a history of all your interactions with these NPCs, so they will remember all the conversations you've had, and will remember who you are and what you've achieved, as long as those things are part of their reality, so to speak. One thing I'd love to see in a future update to this mod would be actually getting the NPCs to take action against someone, or to steal things, by convincing them through conversations that it would be beneficial to them to do so. Maybe they would be more easily swayed if your speech skill was higher or something along those lines. Now, what about more in-game obscure topics? Is there someone in Whiterun who we could talk to about those weird dwarven automatons? Maybe Farengar has something to say on the matter.
The creation of intelligent machines and constructs can certainly lead us to question how we define life and consciousness. Ultimately, the existence of constructs such as automatons can serve to further our knowledge and understanding of the world around us.
Well, if you look past the clunky text-to-speech, man, this is cool. Farengar would reasonably be someone who would have knowledge of dwarven automatons, and maybe even have thought about the moral consequences of their invention. I will put some links in the description for more snippets of conversations that the mod author has published on his YouTube channel. And of course, this isn't the only AI NPC project for Skyrim. There are others out there which I will link in the description, and there are other games where modders have added ChatGPT integration, like Mountain Blade, Bannerlord. Now, one concern here is, of course, if these conversations can actually add to the enjoyment of the game, or if they'll become boring and intrusive, excessively long perhaps, or just plain dull. There's a reason why in cinema and theater, the dialogues or monologues don't sound anything like what you'd hear in a conversation in real life. They are carefully crafted with a certain pace to convey certain emotions and to economically carry the story forward. So while the system set in place here with this mod is a step in the right direction and already absolutely fascinating to me, I feel like constraints and perhaps a good dose of curating will be necessary to keep the conversations interesting and captivating once these systems make it into future games. Ideally, this could even be tailored in future games, and you could maybe go into the game's options and choose how realistic and deep you'd want the NPC conversations to be. Definitely tone down the philosophical takes. The most cynical among you might think this will never replace well-crafted dialogue written by professionals, but honestly, the way things are going with modern entertainment, I think AI might actually do a better job. At the very least, hopefully with less subversive ideology thrown in at every opportunity, as we see in today's movies, series, and even video games. Whatever the case may be, this is definitely a step closer to truly immersive gaming experiences with NPCs that behave much closer to humans. Is this a good thing, though? I think in the short to medium term, yes, while it remains fairly basic, adding to the immersion could result in very interesting experiences and create moments of joy. But I do worry about the effects of this level of immersion in games. People are already being turned into sheep. The system, or whatever you want to call it, has left people with less power than they've ever had. They can't afford a house, maybe not even a car now. People don't want to get into relationships because of how delusional everyone is with completely unrealistic expectations set by social media and internet echo chambers. People are numb to anything that requires real effort, feeding off of quick dopamine hits from social media or competitive video games especially. The very nature of capitalism and the structure of corporations and how labor is viewed today, where people are squeezed out of everything they have for maximizing corporate profits, while materialism drives people's resources, leaving them sedated but thirsty for more, is already leaving people isolated in their own delusional reality. Add to that a VR headset and an immersive world with NPCs like this, or even more convincing, where people can lose themselves in, and I wonder what will happen to future human interactions. Will people completely lose the ability to operate in a real-world social environment? Will these virtual worlds where you can be anyone and have rich enough interactions be so much more compelling than reality that the phrase, "you will own nothing and you will be happy," will become the norm for the vast majority of people, if it's not already? I mean, the way AI is transforming gaming, and we've only just seen the tip of the iceberg, is obviously not the reason why the Western world is going through a radical transformation that is destroying the foundations of what makes a healthy, functioning society. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a doomer when it comes to AI. This all started way back in the early 1900s with Edward Bernays. I've recommended his book Propaganda many times before here on the channel and on Twitter, and I highly suggest you research how Sigmund Freud's nephew helped shape the world into the materialistic corporate enslaved mess that it is today. But there's no doubt that AI and this level of immersion could destroy our own sense of purpose and meaning, leading to great suffering and internal struggle. We are supposed to face reality, conquer mountains, and be rewarded only after great effort in the real world. Interacting, learning, and helping other humans is essential to our sense of meaning. So while this level of AI integration into games is absolutely fascinating to me, it's also a bit scary. And I think before we immerse ourselves into these experiences, we should be well aware of how they drive us away from reality and what the consequences of that could be for all of us. Anyway, pardon the social commentary or philosophical rambling. Much like our blacksmith Adriana Venici did, I'll leave the philosophy to those who have time for it, and I shall stick to what I know best: forging weapons and armor. I mean, making videos on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. This video was made possible by my awesome patrons. By supporting my channel on Patreon, you will gain access to the Cortex Discord server, where you can talk to me directly and join a welcoming community of tech enthusiasts. If you can't contribute at this time, then give this video a like and share it, as that really helps. Thanks for watching, and until the next one.